Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the final installment of The State for this week. It's a Friday, actually, and that explains the reason I've decided to adorn myself in African regalia. But away from that lightness, this afternoon, we're going to dwell on a very heavy matter, the matter of the malignant depreciation of the Ghana cedi. We're taking a breather. When we come back, we're going to delve into the details. My name is Paa Kwesi Schandorf. Don't go anywhere.
Sorry, not sure.
Wake up to a purposeful day.
Get ready for a transformational morning experience.
Sorena Shrine is here to build our spirituality, mental and physical well-being.
Through positive, inspiring actions and stories.
We bring you exciting activities and conversations that develop us as a people and as a nation.
We take a look at the trending issues in Ghana and the rest of the world.
And we also review the impacting stories from our local newspapers.
Every morning, we bring you stories of hope, change, and renewal.
We empower you through the Word of God and provoke you to live the purposeful life destined for you.
Join us, Anita Kwaku
and the Reverend 𝗟𝗑𝗩𝗘 Monday to Friday from 5:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. as we take you on an inspiring journey, live and exclusively on WTV.
You may also join us on Facebook at WTV Ghana and on YouTube at 𝗟𝗵𝗃𝗏 Ghana.
Sorry, not Shrine.
Wake up to a purposeful day.
Sorena Shrine is brought to you by
Danwell Insurance, Multi-Credit Savings and Loans,
and the Methodist University Ghana.
Kwani try asio try kwan opani anyway ye bo kwan kotu asio free tete odomankoma de yakwa akoto no kwan ya fa so koto no enya de kro enti mpanin se fa so koto enti menya panin sire krokoto fa so koto aye nhwehwemu ade ko krokoto no ho enti nsuo aye panin yakoto e edu fa sa akwa we so ekase nyame ene de edikan e wa kwan nyina mu efise ono de o ho ene yebeto no obo ye ene yebehu no enti yakwane aye fa so hunu nyame no e kire egina ba bia ye tie ene ya mamre so enti sa nyame krokoto no obehu ni ye ya agye se wo kwan ya ono aboawo nyansa ma watimi abo ato wo na mpani mfuro swai de ato ho ama wo no uhunu sa kwan no na ofa so de sum ni ye
empanyi betrase na ye swan adwen hwe yanim na ye nchekura.
All right, it's a Friday, and I believe all of us are getting ready to zoom ourselves into the weekend. But when you get into the weekend, whatever activity that you concern yourself with certainly would involve the use of money. And that is why the value of the local currency is a conversation that is worth having. And this afternoon, we're going to delve into why we have gotten to this point of our economic life where really nothing seems to be happening, where the appreciation of the local currency as against major trading currencies is concerned. It's now time for us to serve you with W briefs, and like I've always been saying, this is where we give you the relevant facts concerning whatever issue that we have itemized for discussion. So we're getting into the depreciation of the cedi, but before we get into today's edition, I think it's appropriate for us to recognize me in particular, or the entire of the team, to indicate that the team behind this research work have always been superfluous. I'll tell you their names before we end the show. But back to the substantive matter, the depreciation of the cedi. Now, this is a fact you need to know. When the cedi depreciates against the US dollar, it means that the value of the Ghanaian currency in relation to the US dollar decreases. In simple terms, it takes more cedis to buy $1. So whenever you hear the term depreciation, this basically explains the crux, the gravamen, and the thrust of depreciation. It simply means that you would need more of the local currency to acquire a single dollar. Now, the depreciation of the cedi against the US dollar continues its upward trend on the commercial forex market, with the loss in value nearing 10% for the first quarter for the first 4 months in 2024. So indeed, this is a challenge that has been with us for a very long time, but for the purposes of this interaction, we are limiting ourselves to the events that have happened in 2024, precisely the very first quarter. Now, since the beginning of the year, in particular 2024, the cedi has experienced a marginal depreciation, marking a year-to-date depreciation of approximately 9.3%. I want to take that one again. Now, since the beginning of the year, that is 2024, the cedi has experienced marginal depreciation, marking a year-to-date depreciation of approximately 9.3%. When we get into the crux of the conversation, our experts would unpack this properly for your thorough understanding and assimilation, and therefore we are moving on. Now, what are the major issues? The depreciation of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar is often a major political issue in Ghana due to several reasons. So why is it that anytime the cedi begins to lose its value, everybody becomes agitated? We are getting into why all of us are never happy with the depreciation of the cedi. But by the way, there are a couple of should I say, I don't want to use the word selfish, but there are a number of individuals who actually rejoice when we are in those unfortunate waters. We think here from the States that that is not a patriotic posture, because if the depreciation of the cedi is inuring to your benefit, you should not be happy, because you always have to look at the bigger picture. But why is it a major issue? It is, first of all, because it increases cost of living. So that is the principal reason many Ghanaians are always up in arms whenever the cedi begins to depreciate. Also, it instigates economic instability. Most of the times, whenever the cedi begins to, or rather all the time, anytime the cedi is in a free fall like we are seeing now, it triggers economic instability, which is what we actually meant here. So it has concerns, it affects cost of living, economic instability, as well as impact on businesses. Now, don't forget that only last week we had a crunch conversation with the president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, and he indicated how the depreciation of the cedi is really affecting local businesses in Ghana. Don't forget, he also teased out some solutions which we have shared extensively on our social media platforms as well. Of course, government and accountability also comes into the fray, because we all now begin to ask the question, what is happening? What are the managers of the economy doing? And that really is the political twist of the conversation. And then national pride. So somebody in another country can take your local currency and say that, and I think we see that on Twitter a lot, especially from our green and white neighbors. Normally, they would be mocking us on Twitter and be saying that, well, look at how your Ghana cedi has become, blah, 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 blah. So that deflates our our sense of, nationalhood, or our sense of nationhood. Patriotism is always deflated when the cedi begins to sink into the abyss. The subject of cedi depreciation has been indeed a major political issue in the last couple of elections in the Fourth Republic. Now, in 2016, for example, it was truly what, if you ask me, in my opinion, as a reporter and as a journalist, that was one of the issues that led actually to the defeat of the then ruling National Democratic Congress. But away from that, it is always a topical item on the train of public discourse whenever elections are concerned. Now, while in opposition, this is the point that many Ghanaians are interested in, I beg your pardon, the then NPP presidential candidate, President Akufo-Addo, but of course he was candidate Akufo-Addo back then, and his running mate Dr. Bawumia criticized the John Mahama-led administration for poor management of the cedi and promised to do better. In fact, a whole lecture was held by the vice president at Central University, where he itemized, what he felt were the issues, and he also proposed a couple of solutions. The question now, from 2016 till now, is that how has the cedi fared in the hands of the current managers of the economy? They called the ex-administration names, they lampooned, they vilified, they excessively criticized the regime at that time. Indeed, they had cause to even say that ex-president John Dramani Mahama was incompetent. So today we are asking the question, what is the state of the cedi under their watch? I'm going to now take you to the average cedi to dollar rate in 2024 alone. So we're going to start off in January. Now, in the month of January, the cedi was somewhere around 12 cedis 30 pesos to $1, and so many people were concerned. Nobody was happy because, of course, if we look at what was happening in 2016 to January of this year, there had been a rather exponential appreciation. But just when we thought we were being beaten enough, in February we will suffer the more, because there was an appreciation from 12 cedis 30 pesos to now 12 cedis 60 pesos, and March gave many of us headaches because we moved from 12 cedis 60 pesos to 13 cedis 20 pesos. Don't forget that we are in May, but something tragic happened in the month of April. We moved from 12 cedis 30 pesos in January, we came to February 12 cedis 60 pesos, in March we recorded 12 cedis 20 pesos, and then in the month of April, the fourth month of the year, it shot to 13 cedis 70 pesos. Now, the figures that we are projecting here are aggregated, as it were, numbers, and so it is not from just a single source, it is aggregated or averaged. Then in the month of May, we're still in the month of May, I believe today is the 17th of May exactly. On the 17th of May, as we're about to set the tone for this conversation, the cedi is now 14 Ghana cedis 50 pesos. Now that logically presupposes that it is only 50 pesos short of reaching the dreaded 15 Ghana cedis mark. Indeed, we have heard a couple of experts indicate that by the end of the year, the cedi will be somewhere around 20 or 25 Ghana cedis. I'm going to tell you a story, something that happened, and this is just last night. I mean, I had stepped out to go and, find something to eat. And for the very first time, I heard the kinky seller tell me that her ball, each of her balls is now 7 Ghana cedis. I was outstanded, and I really didn't know what to do. But she made a case that, well, the cedi is in the free fall, and therefore she's not able to, as it were, make profit, subsequent to which, the prices have gone that way. But I don't think I'm the only person who has some of these rather painful experiences. You at home, I believe, also have some of these concerns, and that is basically because in the month of May, the cedi is 14 cedis 50 pesos. We are making progress now. So that is basically the chart that explains from January, February, March, April, May. April, and then we are of course in the month of May. So the big question that we are asking is what are the current managers of the economy doing? But let's get to the talk. The Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adams, has reassured Ghanaians of the government's commitment to curbing the depreciation of the local currency. So government has been communicating on the matter, and this man here, the earlier man, the substantive finance minister, he took over from 𝗟𝗓𝗙𝗘 at a time when Ghanaians were clamoring reason for his exit. He exited, and we have a new man at post. Now to Dr. 𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘. Don't forget that he staged that particular lecture where he famously said that, I think you remember the quote, but the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. 𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘, he said that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate certainly will expose you. Have they been exposed? We are going to get into the cracks of that conversation. Dr. 𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘 also says that the depreciation of the cedi, can we bring that one back? I want us to project, thank you. Also, Dr. 𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘 also says that the depreciation of the cedi under the New Patriotic Party is lower than what was inherited from the NDC. These are some of the concerns that get a number of Ghanaians agitated, because the concern has been that, look, you came into office, now you have been given the opportunity to rule. There should not be any comparative analysis of what was happening in the past. But perhaps all of that constitutes the politics of, the cedi depreciation. The minority leader, Dr. 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗄 has advised Dr. 𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘 to consider quitting dancing on the campaign trail to focus on saving the depreciating cedi. So that is the reaction from the minority in parliament, urging the vice president, who of course is the head of the economic management team, to focus more on the depreciating currency instead of his campaign activities. So this afternoon we are asking that, after all the political talk, the big question: what are we not doing right as a country? We take a breather. When we come back, I introduce my guests, and then we get into the gravamen of today's conversation. All right. Thanks a lot for your patience. It's now time for us to get into the substance of this afternoon's conversation. Don't forget that we're coming to you live from the Grand House here at Adabraka, and this platform is the state, of course, on Wesleyan television. What we seek to do on this platform is to pick relevant national issues and dissect them on the altars of unbiased scrutiny. Apart from that, we also always want to propose solutions, because of course, because of our, given our Christian orientation, we always want to advance needful and progressive conversations. So we do not only expound on the issues, we always want to propose solutions, and this afternoon would not be any exceptions. Joining us via Zoom this afternoon is Professor Lord Mensah. Professor Lord Mensah is a financial economist at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, it's a privilege to have you and be in our company this afternoon.
Yeah, and good afternoon to our viewers.
All right. This is just as a starter. Have you, as it were, made any recent transactions, within the past month, to experience the free fall of the local currency?
I have an transaction that would involve the purchase of the dollar. But then the transmission effect of the dollar in my house or in my daily activities is what I can tell you about. Because I buy fuel. I also, give my wife housekeeping money. So obviously when he goes to the market and things have changed, comes home with that pressure. Whichever way you look at it, I will feel it, even though I have not done any direct transaction that would involve, the purchase of the dollar.
All right, that point is well noted, and thanks for those preliminary comments. We'll also be joined via Zoom by Professor 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗘. He's an economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. We understand he's going to join us very soon. But in studio, we have a public policy advocate and a research analyst, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗪𝗘, who is joining us for this all-important conversation. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗪𝗘, you're welcome to this particular platform.
Thank you, Pa. Thank you. Nice to have me.
Of course. Just like it's a pleasure to hear. Just like I posed to Professor Lord 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗓. I mean, what is your experience with the free fall of the cedi, especially in recent times? Before we get into the substance of our conversation.
Well, thank you, Pa. Let me use the opportunity to greet my former lecturers, Professor Lord 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗓, and of course, Professor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗓. You know, because they are my former lecturers, that is why I have to reach out to my pen and paper immediately. And so, professors, good afternoon. Now, Paa Kwesi, the truth of the matter is that when it comes to the depreciation conversation, it is not about an individual, because whatsoever we do, whether economic or what have you, once the cedi is depreciated, you will have a feel of it. It will affect you in one way or the other. Professor Lord 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗓 mentioned that although he had not made any transaction, including dollar, in recent times, the ripple effect of the depreciation has affected him to the extent that even the chop money, as it is, that he gives to the wife in the house, has been, you know, greatly affected. So as a person, I am equally affected. If you are going to the Parliament of Ghana, at the Ridge Roundabout, there is a cocoa seller there. You know, every morning I delight in taking something light, like cocoa, before I start my day's activities. And so yesterday when I got there, I normally buy 3 cedis before I add the other elements like granules or, you know, bread. So just yesterday when I got there, the woman told me that, sir, I'm sorry, but you cannot buy cocoa 3 cedis with sugar. And I said, what do you mean? And she said that, look, if you want sugar in your cocoa today, you must buy from 4 cedi upwards. I'm saying, then I was like, Jesus Christ, has it gotten to this level? And she told me that, look, the recent depreciation of the cedi has affected the entire market. And as a result, they have resolved that they are not going to sell cocoa with sugar from at 3 cedis. So you want cocoa with sugar, you must buy from 4 cedi upwards. I mean, if you close from studio, you can take a walk to that joint. She's still there because she sometimes closes as late as 5.
To the evening.
Exactly. And so the economic effect of the depreciation, as we are seeing today, is a great concern, and we must not grandstand on this issue. We must have the hard talks about it, and this is where we are. Either two people feel a bit agitated when you point out the fact to them that, look, you are not doing well. You are not doing well, because when you wanted the seat of government, these are issues you jumped on. In your W brief, you mentioned how the then running mate to the current president, and who is now the vice president, made a whole lot of noise about the cedi depreciation. How he called the 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗘 John Dramani Mahama names. But today the reality is before us. We cannot speak to any conjecture. You have come and sit on the seat of decision making, and this is the best you have put forward, and we must be able to have these hard conversations. It is the only way to go. So I am greatly affected by the depreciation, and as I speak to you, I am not playing 1001. I am playing whatsoever happens, I'll take solace in the future, because I don't know.
So your feeding pattern, if you are, I mean, for those who are not aware of, I mean, those who do not understand the brief he was communicating, because of the general hardship in the country, there is the current talk about, you know, normally there is breakfast, there is lunch, and then there is supper. So that is 111. But people now vary it. So there is 010, there is, you know, 100, and all of that. You say that you don't even, I mean,
there is no 001 or 100 in my situation, and I think that it is similar elsewhere, or to the generality of the masses. And I'll tell you why. You see,
in 30 seconds, then I get to
in 30 seconds. The truth of the matter is that even transportation fee, trotro fee, today is difficult to come by. Each now and then you will see passengers, commuters fighting in trotros as a result of how the depreciation of the cedi has orchestrated this hardship on all of us. So I am saying that we need to do something, and very urgent. This is not time for political somnambulism and manipulation. No, this is time for action, and we need to have the hard conversation, because it is the only way out. We cannot continue to micromanage clear cases of mismanagement of our economy, and when we want to hold duty bearers accountable to their promises and their mismanagement, then people say that we are becoming political. I am saying that when you come to us at the policy table, we say that the CD depreciation is a clear case of economic mismanagement.
I think that point is well made, because it ties into the question that is next for Professor Lord Mensah. Prof, there are a multiplicity of issues, we can all agree, that have culminated in our current economic circumstances. But if you were to itemize 3 of those situations that have brought us here, what 3 were you going to settle on? Of course, we do understand, I mean, like Mr. Tagbo has said, there's a concern about economic mismanagement. Corruption has also been implicated, and indeed a variety of issues. But which 3 of those causes would you readily say are the reasons for where we have gotten to in our national life economically?
Okay, so first of all, I will talk about the structure of the economy. Structure of the economy, in a sense that our economy, we know very well that every single country that will have a bilateral trading agreement turn out to advantage those countries rather than Ghana. For instance, we may have bilateral trading agreement. We'll end up importing more from the US than Portugal. Same way, we may have bilateral trading agreement with China. We'll end up importing more from China than we export to them. So effectively, we import more than we export. So the net effect will be that we need more dollars to import. So there's pressure on the demand for the dollar. Again, respect for Ghanaians by policymakers. The reason why I'm saying respect for Ghanaians by policymakers is that policymakers continue to do the same thing over the years, expecting a change. You see, our exchange rate, we've never taken any drastic measure to manage exchange rates. Gone were the days we talk about management of our exchange rate in this country, which in other parts of the world, they are temporary measures just to give you fiscal space, to leverage on it, to increase your production. When you increase your production, you strengthen your currency, because you're going to export more than import. One way or the other, it controls the currency. Now, the reason why this respect is not there is that the political, elite have taken Ghanaians for granted. Now, over the years, what we have been doing, managing the exchange rate, is to use cocoa syndicated loan. 2 is to use Eurobond process. And then also the few remittance that will come from our brothers and sisters who are at abroad. But then we are sacrificing production. And every economy that sacrifices its production by using all these, inflows from Bretton Woods institutions, as we speak now, right? Government has not done anything special to manage the exchange rate, than to what? Wait for IMF money. And then the ancillary supporting funds that will come with the agreement we have with the IMF. So I'm talking about World Bank money. These are monies that are coming at a cost, because those monies are not free. And you have avenue to make sure that you export more to generate, dollars at your own advantage. Let's take, for instance, if it costs you $2 billion to import, rice into this country, what prevents you from having planting for food and jobs policy that will target? Go and ask the former agri minister whether he was given any target when he was appointed minister. That will help, that will, allow you to produce, 80% of what you import into this country. You know how much you're going to save, against the dollar. So effectively, we have, messed up, the economy in such a way that we continue to do business as usual. And as a result of that, we fail to, put in more measures or sacrifice for production policies. Rather, we go by the easy way of getting dollars into the country through borrowing. So the Eurobond money, that's what compared our debt. Easy to have, because you go to the market, raise funds, and you see the Western investors, they know very well that your ability to pay these funds is very, very minimal. And as a result of that, they will lend to you because the portion of portfolio that they are investing in your country is just about maybe 3% of the entire portfolio they are managing, because they know the risk levels. And therefore, you are going to give them higher rate. Because if the US is paying around 1.5% on their coupons, and you are going to pay 7%, they will lend to you, because it will take them so many years before they will realize what you are giving them in the US. So effectively, we have availed ourselves for this purpose, because our appetite for borrowing grew because it became an easier venue, and our debt started shooting up unnecessarily when we started visiting the Eurobond market in 2007. That was when we started sacrificing our production capabilities for the easy Eurobond inflows. Because when you produce and you export, right, it will bring in dollars, but you have to go through the mill, right? You have to go through different policies, give cocoa farmers incentive, make sure that the farmers get the right quota in managing their cocoa. That is the difficulty or the pain that we fail to go through, generate that easy dollars that can contain our economy. As we speak now, government of Ghana deferred its cocoa delivery this year. You can go to Bloomberg and check it. So I've confirmed it there. We deferred our cocoa beans delivery, but this is a cocoa beans that's going to give us the dollars. At the same time, we are chasing IMF money. So the finance minister will tell you that, okay, when the IMF money comes, or when the IMF approves, at the board level, the release of the 350 billion, the exchange rate will be stable. Let me tell you, we are joking. Any, funds, inflows, capital inflows that we are using in managing the exchange rate is a temporary one. The IMF money will not resolve the issue here. Because we had what we call balance of payment, crisis, where our dollar buffer had reduced completely to a coverage of about, 1.5 weeks import. And so now we have to build it up. And let me give you what IMF does. IMF does not give money when your economies are good. They only give you money when you are in crisis, right, to rescue the situation. And when they give you the money, they expect that you leverage on the cushioning they're giving you to get the fiscal space. And out of the fiscal space, you can roll out policies to, your economy. So effectively, we have compromised one way or the other by sacrificing our production capabilities for easy dollar inflow, cocoa syndicated loan, IMF money, Eurobond market, inflows. We have been priced out from the market anyway. Cocoa syndicated loan, we have messed it up. The cocoa board itself is not functioning very well as expected. You can ask anybody that is working there. Their balance sheet is struggling. As a state-owned institution, you have mismanaged it. This is, a state asset that is supposed to give us dollar inflow. So when you put all these things together, that brought about what we call balance of payment crisis. The depletion of the, our balance of payment.
Prof, hold on, let me land, please. You allow me to forget my flow. So, you see, when we found ourselves in a balance of payment crisis, we went to the IMF. IMF, pegged us, attach some performance indicators to the releases they're supposed to give us. Right. So if it's 3 billion, they said, perform up to this level, we'll give you this amount. Perform up until we exhaust the 3 billion in 2026. That is 3-year program. Now, within the 3 years, the fiscal space that we are enjoying as this IMF inflow
the first 600 million? How did we capitalize on it in terms of the space that, the fiscal space that the 600 will give us in, putting up some policies that will enhance, production? Let me tell you, when your currency, I think you will come to that, the solution, right?
Of course.
I would prefer the solution. But let me tell you that we have compromised one way or the other, and as a result of that, we need to sit up. We cannot continue to do business as usual management, and then we want to change. It will never come.
All right, Prof, thank you very much. So that was Professor 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗘, is financial economist at the University of Ghana Business School, itemizing the reasons that have led us to this particular point. Now, Samson, listening to him carefully, the sentiments that he echoed basically reflect the concerns that you amplified earlier. For example, he was saying in one instance that the structure of the Ghanaian economy, the fact that we are an import-driven economy, of course, it leads to some of these challenges that we have been seeing over the period. But the matter of corruption has also been greatly implicated. Do you think it is something that we have, a conversation we have exaggerated, or indeed the corruption of governance is one of the reasons why we find ourselves in these doldrums?
Well, Paa Kwesi, I think that what Prof has said has summed all the issue up in terms of our inability to produce internally. Look, if you look at the structure of our economy, from the late 80s till now, we are net importers. What it means is that everything in this country, virtually everything, is imported. Right. And when you are importing, we don't use CD on the international markets. So what it means is that we need to have a homegrown program that will allow us to produce some of the basic things that are needed and consumed in large quantity. Prof mentioned government policy of planting for food and jobs. Look, it is one of the jokes that we have entertained in this whole, 7 years, almost 8 years. But the
Great Minister has been touting its prospects and how that.
But where are the foods and the jobs? Mention one state farm that is producing anything to give us food and to offer us job. Look, people think that policy ideation is a matter of quixotic desires, but it's a serious business and they have failed at it. And policy failure is a serious issue. Where are the foods and the job? We don't have one. It is just a name out there on paper. It looks good on paper, and in reality, there's nothing happening.
In reality, a couple of young people who previously were not employed have been enrolled onto a couple of schemes. You do not want to recognize that as one of the advantages of
when we are talking about policy outcomes, we are talking about what is handy. What is the percentage of the young people you are referring to? Even as we speak today, those young people, their businesses that they began under the program has collapsed. They have collapsed all those small farms. So away from our inability to produce domestically to issue of corruption, we cannot downplay the role of corruption in all of this issue. But you remember that not too long ago, the issue of a minister. The issue of a minister. I wanted
to do this in 1 minute because we have to take a break. So in 1 minute.
Yes. You know the minister, 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗑, whose house helps, absconded with quite an amount of dollar. It is not only the Honorable 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗑 who is on these boats. We have a number of them in this situation, except that it is only her own which is out today. So corruption has played a major role in all of this thing.
I want to understand clearly, yes. How does somebody's personal wealth, I mean, of course, we have not been able to establish that the wealth was ill-gotten, but how does somebody's personal acquisition contribute to a national crisis like the depreciation of the local currency?
But if the government of Ghana is going to the world market to purchase any good or item, right, we don't do that in cedis. Absolutely. We do that in dollars. Absolutely. If you have a minister of state who is holding such a colossal amount of dollar in her house, what it means is that she has restricted that money from being in circulation. If the Bank of Ghana could get that money and from elsewhere, from her colleagues who are also in the same boat, then what it means that we could have some level of, dollar within the fiscal space to be able to make transactions on the international market. So it is not about her acquiring the money genuinely or what have you. It is about keeping it when the house is not a bank. There were times when this government encouraged Ghanaians to transact with the banks and allow their monies to go to the bank just so we could have the circulation and allow the fiscal space to flow and all of that. Why was she keeping it in the house?
I think we'll provide the answers when we return from this particular break. But if you are just joining us, today, this afternoon, we are having a crunch conversation on the depreciation of the local currency. And Professor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗓 from the University of Ghana Business School has been really elaborating on some of the causes that have led us to this point. You were just hearing 𝗟𝗵𝗪𝗘, who is a public policy advocate. We would be joined soon by Professor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗘, who is currently held up in another equally important engagement. But we're taking a breather. When we come back, there is more. Do stay.
Praise God, praise God. Christ in tea, you respond, yeah, this year. I'm excited to announce to you, friends in the Lord, are you seeking for a platform where you can pray? Ope baby apeso bompai. Now ninyami edi inkita home. Bibi chiro so. And amanye bi na the same kum. And you come home. Let's go into the prayer room on WTV every Friday 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. to meet seasoned ministers of God that God has raised to impact your life. Remember, John Wesley said, I have too much to do, therefore I spend several hours in prayer in able to do it. That is why we are calling upon you. Meet myself, Reverend 𝗟𝗪𝗘, and the Evangelism Missionary Renewal Directorate as we lead you into the prayer room where we encounter Christ. And I believe your life will never be the same. Call your friends or loved ones every Friday 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. where we will encounter Christ. God bless you. See you on our screens on WTV every Friday 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. God bless you.
That each and every one of us.
Nyansa ashese onyinamishu. Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them. Matthew chapter 19 verse 14. Oh yes, let the little children join hands with WTV every Sunday for a special children's service with the Methodist Church Ghana at 10 a.m. with repeat at 2 p.m. on WTV and Facebook. Nyasa ashese onyinamisho. Wesleyan Television, reaching out to the world.
All right, thanks for your patience. We are back, and this is the state. Today is the Friday's edition, of course, the last installment for the week. We started on Monday, like we always do, so we've had the Monday episode. Wednesday, of course, we also had a very interesting conversation, and this afternoon, we are focusing on the depreciation of the local currency. I've been speaking to 𝗟𝗵𝗪𝗘. 𝗟𝗵𝗪𝗘 is a research analyst and a public policy advocate. Indeed, he's been running a lot of advocacies, from the start of the conversation till now. Professor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗘 is also a financial economist at the University of Ghana Business School, and we are still expecting to have in our company via Zoom Professor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗘, who is also an economist at the University of Ghana Business School. We do understand that he's currently held up, but he'll be joining us shortly. Before we went on the breather, we were asking a question about the impact of corruption on the cedi depreciation, and you were making the points that it is not an issue that we can gloss over, and you were citing the instance of Cecilia Dapa. You may want to proceed on that tangent, then we move into another layer of the discourse.
But the truth is that when you look at corruption and how it has affected our economy, we cannot underestimate the impact. And I cited Cecilia Dapa as an example because that is one classical example. We have numerous examples out there. And when you have a situation where a minister could afford such an amount of money in her house, at the time the country is calling for a situation where we have all of those dollars in the banks, then we cannot say that such manner of corrupt activity has nothing to do with the level of the depreciation we see today. You see, the dollar to cedi rate as we have it today, if it were the situation some 7 years ago, I do not think that we will have years in this country. You remember in 2018, when the vice president told the whole country that he has arrested the dollar and handed over the key to the IGP. And we said that, look, the mode through which you are attaining the relatively stable depreciation at the time was wrong, and it will come, the effect of it will come boomeranging on our face. He says no. The political communicators say no. He went to the Eurobond market, borrowed 2.5 billion, and also went for another 2.5 billion from Templeton, which sum up to 5 billion at the time, with other, borrowings, to give some relative stability to the cedi at the time. But we told you, like Prof also said, that when you expect capital inflows from the Eurobond market to cushion your fiscal space here in your domestic, country, what happens is that it gives you a temporary hold up. So you may enjoy that relativity, but with time, the market will expose the outcome, and that is what we are seeing today.
But was it really just to calm you, was it really the market that really affected us? I mean, of course, progress was being made until we had COVID-19 striking. I mean, then after COVID-19, when we were getting out of the woods, the Russian-Ukraine war also became, as it were, an albatross on our necks. These two cannot be, as it were, insulated from the conversation.
But you see, it is sometimes worrying when we want to, shake our responsibilities in taking decisions when we know that we are the ones who are supposed to take those decisions. I'm trying to say that when we label our woes on exogenous factors, external factors, then it means that we ourselves as a country, we do not understand.
But are they not impactful? I mean, globally, every economy across the globe was severely and adversely affected, and Ghana was not an exception in that circumstance.
It will be unfair to suggest that the exogenous factors do not play any role in the situation we find ourselves in today. But the point I'm trying to make is that we cannot wholesomely blame those factors for our clear mismanagement. And
out of 100%, before you tell me why, out of 100%, I need you to do the appropriation. To what extent did you think that the COVID-19 pandemic and other externalities affected or inspired our current circumstances?
Well, but if you look at where we have come from 2017, 18, 19, and 20 before the strike of COVID, I do not think that COVID is the sole reason and has any much impact on what we are
so
seeing
impact
today.
Assessment out of 100%.
Impact assessment out of 100, let me be magnanimous enough to say that COVID and other exogenous factors had barely 26% so far, because our economic outlook was porous before the occasion of COVID. I am saying that, I'm trying to say that when you look at how we have managed the economy from 2017, 18 and 19, the cedi depreciation didn't do any better before COVID. We were not doing any better. What was the depreciation as of 2018 and 2019? And even in 2018, what actually gave us the relative stability was the Eurobond loan and the 2.5 billion loan that the vice president led the committee to go for from Franklin Templeton that gave us that relative stability. And so when COVID came, the reality was before us. What COVID actually did was to expose the reality of the state of the economy and the depreciation to the entirety of Ghana. And when that happens, nobody can deny the reality, because facts were looking at their very faces and nobody could run away from it. So that's the situation.
Let me find out from Prof. Do you also share in that same sentiments that already we were at the precipice of danger? We were already getting into the doldrums before the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, I do share the same concern. If you look at before the COVID-19 crisis and then the Russian-Ukraine war, our economy was overly exposed. We're a bit fragile. You know, an economy that can boast of maximum of, 4 months import cover as your buffer, you don't, title this economy as a robust economy. And, the impact of this, force majeure, talking about the crisis, recover depends on your buffer and how you'll be able to receive the shocks. Ghana was already exposed. Crisis, happened. Let me take a shot on the corruption question that you posed earlier.
Exactly, very important.
How corruption roots into, exchange rate depreciation and all those. It's clear. See, this country, if you want to raise money, and government raises money for projects, chunk of our investments are in short-term instruments. So, talking about a year, 2 years maximum, government raises money in this environment, in CD environment, maximum of 5 years and all those. So our market is not a place where you can raise money for long-term investment. So while we have been raising money for long-term investment, are foreign monies, they are dollars that we bring into this country. And so when we bring the dollar, and then a multi-million project, right, turns out to be on sale, the project will go through different hands, contract will go through different hands before a final execution. Before it gets itself, that multi-million dollar, if it's 3 billion, it has to be 1.5 billion. A lot of, sharing in there. 1.5 billion going into a project that is supposed to last for maybe 15 years. Well, let's assume that a 3 billion, project is supposed to last 15 years, and then the money get reduced to 1.5 billion as a result of what? Corruption and leakages. It will only do a project that will last, halfway through the 15 years. So let's say 7 years. Now, this project to last for 15 years is now lasting 7 years. After this, will still be continuing to that your long-term debt, 15 years debt that you took, from somewhere in Europe to Ghana. So you will continue to service the debt when you don't have an asset, because the project that you did with the 7 years will just expire. That project will wipe off. If it is road, flood will, because it won't be a quality road. That's supposed to last for that, 15 years. So that road will be wiped off, and in the end, you still need more external debt. You also see projects that will be started by a particular regime, but it will not end in that regime, spill over into another regime, but it will not be continued. If it does not continue, it's the same debt that has been sunk there. So we need money to service, this debt. See, because of corruption, we'll end up, having a lot of projects that will not be able to generate the necessary cash that we need to service what? The debt. So as a result of that, you will need, cash from somewhere, and that will be, dollars. So whatever little dollar you get, you may have that without generating enough, cash in your country. So corruption goes up into, exchange rate problems as well. Now let's look at, of our economy before the COVID, and after the COVID, we couldn't receive the shock. You see, COVID did not only create liabilities for us. I appreciate it. It was during the COVID that we also had influence from the World Bank because they knew very well that we were, in need of, support at the time. But then anytime we are talking, we talked about, only the liabilities that COVID created. Why don't we take our time, talk about the inflows that we get from these Bretton Woods institutions during the COVID, whether it will net off the liability. If it was able to net off the liability, why are we parading the debt during COVID and Russian-Ukraine war? So all that I would say is that we find ourselves in this situation, one, because we were well exposed before the COVID, and then two, as a result of economic mismanagement at this time. Let me go back to the city. You see, first quarter of this year, we know very well that there are seasonal pressures when it comes to, dollar demand in this country, because in the first quarter, that is when most of the multinationals are repatriating to their shareholders, so they have to, change their cedis to dollars to go and pay their external shareholders. And then in the same first quarter, that we see these businesses who have sold up, their inventory during the Christmas festivities, and then they are restocking. All this happens in the first quarter. So permanently there has been seasonal pressures. And, for me, once you get to know the pattern, managing the exchange rate is not a problem. So the first quarter ended in April. Then after April, the cedi has now started falling again. What is happening is that there was a reaction in the first quarter, which is the seasonal pressures. After the first quarter, which ends in April, going into going into the next quarter, which we find ourselves in now, May, the depreciation is as a result of economic mismanagement. We can't attribute it to anything apart from economic mismanagement.
Right. Let me also pick your thoughts on this one before I come to something. And this is taking us back to the period before the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's not forget that from 2018, government had started the flagship free senior high school policy, a policy that everybody can attest to the fact, or the generality of the populace can affirm that indeed expanded access to senior high school education. So the relevance is not in question. Do you not think that if indeed factually the economy was already at the brink of a collapse prior to COVID, it is justifiable because indeed there was a social intervention program that was sucking up the bulk of our cash, free SHS policy?
You see, do you know the problem, of this country? We talked about free SHS. Let's look at, the percentage of our budget that goes to the education ministry relative to our GDP. It's a very small percentage. There are key MDAs that draw huge budgets, which we've not been discussing them. Let's look at the flagship ministries that were created in the first half of this government. These ministries were ministries that came to draw, our budget, draw funds from the state, right, without any production. I can tell you for a fact. Go around the country, right, you will see a lot of flagship programs like toilets that were being built for communities, what do we call it, funeral podiums, market. A lot of them are uncompleted now. So you ask yourself, how can we create about 5 to 6 ministries that will go into a project? And remember, these ministries are coming with their structures, administrative structures. Ministers are going to be decorated as they are supposed to be, like the normal mainstream ministers. We're talking about directors that will be transferred to those areas. We're talking about people that are going to be employed, that are going to be paid, pretending as if they are working. At the end of the day, there's 5 ministries, the second term, have you heard of them? Go into the budget from 2017 and catalog the quantums of monies that we have been allocated to these ministries over the years and relate it to the projects that were supposed to, executed by this ministry. Talking about the Zongo ministry and all those. Ask yourself, relate the budget that they were drawing to the project that they were supposed to execute. You will come to realize that they were just ministries that came to wash themselves off, the state, coffers, at the end of the day, we're not getting any benefit from them. So these are all part of the genesis of our debt. And somebody will say, oh, that is local, you know, what do we call it? Current Ghana cedi debt. Look, it is Ghana cedi debt. That is why Bank of Ghana will print 60 billion that we will not get to know where those monies will go, because it will end up in unproductive, you know, sectors. And when it happens like that, it puts pressure on your imports, because whatever you're supposed to produce to replace what you are importing, they are just going down the drain without any, you know, production. And so effectively, your foreign exchange is going to suffer. Now, you talk about free SHS. Free SHS, let's look at the budget allocation for free SHS over the years. I mean, it is doing its part. For me, once it comes to education, I don't joke with it. You'll marvel where a day will come that you say, okay, fine. Even the kenke seller by the roadside knows how to manage his kenke selling very well. At the end of the day, they're able to, you know, open their books, get to know how much corn they are buying, and then the profit they are taking and everything. I mean, it increases, you know, the income levels of the country, and therefore tax revenues will also go up, you know, in future. But the question is, how are we handling it? Is it sustainable? Can we continue to provide that, you know, free SHS? And what is the percentage of our tax revenue? Is it drawing? It's just a small amount. Let's not hide behind free SHS. It's just a microcosm of all the policies that are drawing from the state coffers.
Right, thank you very much. Samson, before I come to pick your take, this one is coming from 𝗟𝗵𝗲𝗬𝗘. He's one of our viewers on Facebook, and he says that issues relating to the cedi depreciation is a concern for all. Let us come out with measures using this platform and not the usual blame games. But this is the more important comment. He says that you can blame any government on our exchange rate challenges, but if we fail to play our role as part of the process, we will always see this. He says that our high taste for foreign goods won't solve our cedi depreciation issues, and that we are the same people who choose to engage the black market instead of the banking systems. I'm sure when we get to the arena of solutions, we may want to touch on some of these. But the matter of the free SHS policy, it sucked a lot from government, and indeed is still impactful on the budgetary allocation of the state. Is that not enough justification?
Well, Kwesi, the truth is, before I even come to the free SHS issue, let me put this message across. You mentioned how COVID disrupted our economy and all of that, and
which is a fact.
It's a fact. And Prof articulated on the fact that, look, we were already exposed as an economy before the emergence of COVID. He made a statement, and I've always maintained that position, that look, COVID was more a blessing to Ghana than it is a curse in terms of revenue mobilization. And I'll tell you why. Look at the amount of money this country realized as a result of this COVID. Though it was not a situation, or it's still not a situation we are happy about, because it's a health concern, but we also made some useful gains in terms of revenue mobilization. And
that revenue was used, not to cut you, but that revenue was used to, as it were, incentivize healthcare workers. There was free distribution of meals and a number of interventions for the populace.
I think otherwise.
All of those, we recorded all of those in this country.
I think otherwise, and I'll tell you why. The revenue we've realized from the COVID was not expeditiously used. And I'll give just one example because of time. You remember one Felicia Tete, the second vice chairperson for the New Patriotic Party in the Northern region, who happens to be the parliamentary candidate in the 2020 election. She confessed to the whole country that, look, the party shared the COVID funds that we got from the Bretton Woods institutions and elsewhere to them for purposes of campaign, and that she got 100,000 Ghana cedis.
Campaigning here should be in context. I mean, you may want to look at a means of soliciting vote, but effectively it was all about helping, I mean, those who were underprivileged. That was, if you look at the measures, for example, you look at the hot meals that were served, the provision of PPEs, nose masks and all of that. That is the context of campaigning, she indicated, as far as I recall.
COVID revenue shared to parliamentary candidates of one particular party for campaign purposes justifiable? No, it cannot be. It can never be. No matter how the monies were used for the purposes of campaign, since it is not a policy across board, that is not enough justification. So, Kwesi, let the truth hold same that COVID actually gave us a lot of revenue, but we were unable to manage those revenues and use those monies for good purposes, as evident in the case of Felix Atete and others. Now to the issue of free SHS sacking the biggest component of
in 2 minutes, so we go to the solutions.
Our budget. Because see, the truth is that if you look at the budgetary allocation to free SHS, like Prof indicated, it is just a microcosm of the entire annual budgetary funding amount. Because from the start of the program in 2017, the government made proposition of 211 million Ghana cedi to be drawn from the annual budgetary funding amount from Parliament, which was granted. Subsequent to that, it rose to 212. Now, if you look at that budgetary allocation to the free SHS, you ask yourself, what is the percentage of that amount in terms of the total annual budgetary funding amount? So it is just a microcosm of the total amount. So we cannot say that because of one policy of free SHS, the entirety of our budget is being choked by revenues drawn to support the policy. Fantastic. But if the situation we have today can be attributed to free SHS, then it means that the elsewhere government, the previous government, had done a yeoman's job. Because when you look at the free SHS policy and the revenue commitment to it, and you compare that to flagship programs and projects under the NDC era, then you can safely say that indeed the elsewhere NDC government was more judicious in terms of revenue.
Well, but there was depreciation around that period as well. I mean,
what was the depreciation?
The depreciation of the local currency. I mean, it was an issue. Granted, we may want to say that
at the time in 2016, the depreciation at that time was 3 cedis. 60
exactly, but businesses were still affected. I mean, there was also the power crisis around that time. Point effectively is that it was not all glossy, so it's not as if
it will never be all glossy. But when you do comparative analysis, looking at the outcome beforehand and looking at the output, then the performances, you cannot in any way, to be very honest, you cannot in any way put all of these people in one basket and say that, look, because everybody faced their own challenges, all of you have done your best. No, one actually did better than the other. But that is not the point of this conversation. The point is this: COVID, free SHS, the two combined cannot be a reason.
The Russian-Ukraine war, which also had an impact, you did not at that one.
Kwesi, we are not a country living in isolation. It is a lazy man's approach to want to shake your responsibility by taking solace in the exogenous factors, like I've intimated earlier. Look, countries are also involved in this situation. Why are they coming out strongly? You remember the situation where the current president, at the time he was the candidate, he used to compare the economy of Ghana to Ivory Coast. Do you remember that? Anytime he finds a space to speak to us as Ghanaians, he says that, look, Ivory Coast, our neighbor country, is just here doing this and that and that. What's happening in Ghana? Today, Cote d'Ivoire is also suffering from these exogenous factors, like the Russia-Ukraine war, like the COVID. But how is their economy faring? Today, you will not hear the president comparing Ghana to Cote d'Ivoire. Because I tell you what, if you have a situation, leadership is not when everything is all good and glory. We elect you as leaders to sail us through the muddy waters when situations are tough. And so when you have a situation where the whole globe is suffering from COVID and Russia-Ukraine war, and you cannot come out of it successfully, you are performing poorer and others are doing well, what should we say about your leadership? It means you have been abysmal. It means that you don't know what it means to lead your people in times of crisis. We elected you as leaders because we wanted you to be here and help us. If you cannot, then have you not failed? Why do you want us to invent new names for clear cases of mismanagement, leadership failure, PR governance, and everybody wants us to invent
let's get into the arena of solutions, because we have some 5 minutes more to call it a wrap. Now, looking at the plethora of issues that we have passed around this particular table, and the crisis and the impact, and your recent comments, what do you think we can do at this particular point to have a better narrative with respect to the depreciation of the local currency? I mean, you proposed a measure or two, and I'll come to Professor Lord
the way forward is clear. One, government must take frantic efforts to cut down on corruption. It is important that we take that decision. Two, we must discourage the attempt to make some institutions trade in dollars. I mean, we must vehemently prohibit the dollarization of services in this country. Three, we must take bold steps to industrialize key sectors in this economy. We need to revisit, for example, the planting for food and job. I've always maintained that it has not been there. But if it is there on paper, let's implement it. Look, let us have state farms, district farms. I mean, in every corner of this country, at least we can afford our basic needs, which is food and shelter, before we look at the things we cannot produce internally and have to import them and all of that. So I believe that if we take these decisions as a country, it will help us in the long term. Look, the fiscal policy...
30 seconds.
The fiscal space we have now is unhealthy. And I want to encourage the Vice President, Dr. 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗊, to stop dangling like the way the CD is dangling to the dollar rate on stages. He's dancing anyhow.
No, but I mean, I wouldn't want us to go there.
I want him to face
he's at liberty to... The Vice President, in an attempt to win Paa, has liberty to amplify his messages in ways he deems fit. How does that in any way affect the current situation?
When we have serious crises such as this depreciation, and he is making merry, he is dancing. Somebody who is the chair of the economic management team is supposed to be at the forefront of this.
He has been proposing bold solutions. He has been articulating a number of policies that, if we rolled out today, we would be out of the woods. I think you should be fair to the Vice President. In 1 minute, then I come to Professor.
We are at a state where Bloomberg has described our economy as record-breaking weakening circle, and we have the chairman of the economic management team dancing around to become president when he's supposed to front the team to address the situation. We cannot be making merry when there is serious crisis before us. Look at the depreciation. Look at how it has a rippling effect on everything we do. I tell you today, in most cases, in most areas, when you go to buy kenke, they sell pepper. Are you aware? Because we are in a serious crisis.
Well, let me come
and that is how serious it is. So we cannot be making merry when there is serious issue to tackle. Well, so I am inviting the Vice President.
I will not characterize that as merry-making. I will say it is incidental to campaigning, but you can have your say on that note. Professor Lord Mensah, Mr. Tagwo did indicate that we would have to stop trading in dollars in our local jurisdiction. But there's also been the conversation that we should rather do the opposite. I mean, revert to the dollar as a means of, our currency of trading. Do you think it's the solution that we can employ? If not, what are the other measures that we can embrace at this particular point?
So the question, I'll respond to your question with a question. We need to, appreciate the minimum wage levels in this country and relate it to the dollar before we start talking about, embracing the dollar as a medium of exchange. A minimum wage may not be up to $3 and in a day. So if you dollarize this country, you're going to make the rich people rich and then make the poor people poorer. And what is going to happen is that you increase income inequality. And at the end of the day, purchasing power levels. So the economy, the point will not be for some people. And when it happens like that, you can create, social instability. And so that is not something that, I will hope. And I don't think, maybe people have said that, but it's out of frustration that they may have said it. But I can tell you that that is not the solution. See, the solution is that when your currency is depreciated, it's not a bad thing. In fact, there are countries that at the point in time can intentionally, consciously, cause their currency to depreciate. When your currency appreciate, what happened is that, foreign goods becomes expensive. So if you have local substitute for those foreign goods, you don't have problem. And that is when you attract, tourists, right? Because tourists will be bringing in dollars. When you attract, recently we have been doing well in tourism. That is why I'm using the tourism as an example. When you attract tourists, because they come in and they'll be consuming your local product, not imported product, you maintain the dollars that they bring in. But when they come in and then you have to use the dollar that they bring in to import, the goods that the food that they are coming to consume, then more or less your economy becomes a transition point for tourism. Because the dollars are coming in, but then you fly it out again to import. So that won't be the way. So normally, when your economy is having a currency that is depreciating, that is when you increase, local production. So, for policy purposes, going into the mid-year budget review, where there's going to be reallocations and realignment or appropriation of, new, lines of allocations, I will, encourage the minister to make sure that, monies goes into things that we can produce immediately within the next 6 months to 1 year. And if you rank all our importations, what are those? Talking about food items that we can produce here. Make sure that you allocate budget targeted to, if not politically, targeted. If you want to roll out policies of that sort and it turns out to be in political hands, trust me, you will not get any outcome. So when it happens like that, you increase, your local production. And by increasing local production, you're going to increase income, money in people's pocket. You're going to increase their purchasing power, right? Reduce importation. Over time, it will turn up to what? Make your currency expensive.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you get the local currency from. Put them into those policies. Later, you can recoup them back. Because once those monies are pumped into the economy and they come to create multiplier effect by making sure that food inflation comes down, by making sure that food becomes cheaper, which will more or less, complement, other expensive things that are imported. Obviously, money will be in people's hands and they will be in circulation. And then you use the monetary corridors, increase interest rates for them to reinvest the money. When those monies goes back to the Bank of Ghana, they can replace them at where they put it. So from where I sit, that is going to be the immediate term. For me, it's supposed to be production, not expectations of IMF money. You see, the expectations of the IMF money has brought us to a level where we call self-fulfilling crisis. And the self-fulfilling crisis goes with speculations and sentiment. And these are the things that are driving our exchange rate now. So a little hit that the IMF money is not coming, you see the exchange rate dancing up. So those are the things we may have to look at. It has to do with production.
All right, Professor 𝗟𝗓𝗏𝗘 is a financial economist at the University of Ghana Business School, expressing a couple of measures that he believes that if we rolled out was going to redefine our narratives. Something 30 seconds and then we are out of here. Your closing remarks in just 30 seconds.
Well, so thank you. I want to suggest that the central bank take frantic efforts to, as it is, prohibit the commodity pricing in dollars within the country. Just as Prof said, when we do that, at least we can encourage, some level of stability of the cedi. And going forward, we need to look at how we can produce some of the basic needs. Because we have a lot of lands that can support the growth, the production of, rice and what have you.
Local production, basically.
Local production. So let's go into local production.
That point is well made. So we started this particular week with a very important conversation on flooding. Then midweek, that was on Wednesday, we came to the matter of the taxation of the churches. Today we are rounding up with the cedi depreciation. And next week, I'm sure that we would have another pack of relevant issues on the train of national discourse. My name is Paa Kwesi Schandorf. It's been a pleasure serving you. Do have a pleasant week, and whatever you do, don't forget to, of course, go to church on Sunday, because God is God in all things. Bye-bye.